For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. IoT Core is a stripped-down version of Windows for single application devices. True LTSC editions are embedded by hardware manufacturers. False hybrid devices are more popular than tablets for users who do heavy typing. True Instant Go works even when the computer is completely shut down. False. Now that we have gone through the questions and answers, let's move on to the explanation. IoT Core is indeed a lightweight version of Windows designed for small, fixed-purpose devices, such as smart appliances or kiosks, where only a single application needs to run. However, LTSC, or long-term servicing channel editions, are not embedded by manufacturers. Instead, they are installed and licensed by organizations, often for environments where stability and minimal updates are critical, like medical or industrial systems. Moreover, hybrid devices, such as Surface Pro or 2-in-1 laptops, tend to be preferred by heavy typists because they offer better keyboards and performance compared to tablets, making them a more versatile choice for work. Finally, Instant Go is a feature that keeps the device connected during standby, allowing updates or notifications to come through, but it does not work when the computer is fully shut down. Much like how your phone can still receive alerts in sleep mode, but not when it's powered off. For each statement below, indicate whether it is true or false. Each Microsoft Entra tenant can support multiple Azure subscriptions. True. The Microsoft Entra schema includes the computer class and supports domain-based GPOs. False. The application class defines the app. The service principal class represents the app's instance. True. Microsoft Entra ID organizes directory objects using nested organizational units. False. Let's break this down step by step so it's clear. A Microsoft Entra tenant can be linked to many Azure subscriptions, making it easier for organizations to manage identities and access from one place. On the other hand, the Entra schema doesn't have a computer class and can't use traditional domain-based group policy objects, which are features of on-premises Active Directory. The application class is where the app's definition lives, while the service principal is its actual working instance in a tenant, handling authentication and permissions. Lastly, Entra doesn't support nested organizational units. Instead, it uses a flat structure with groups to manage and organize identities, which works well in the cloud but doesn't offer the same deep hierarchy as AD. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Microsoft Entra ID is a PaaS service, not part of infrastructure as a service, and it is managed by Microsoft. Here's how this works. Microsoft Entra ID is categorized as a platform as a service because it provides a ready-to-use identity and access management platform without requiring customers to manage servers or the underlying infrastructure. Unlike infrastructure as a service, which delivers raw computing resources like virtual machines for customers to configure and maintain, PaaS handles the backend automatically. In this case, Microsoft manages both the infrastructure and the backend services, meaning organizations simply configure their tenant and start using Entra without worrying about patching, scaling, or hosting. This setup is similar to how services like Azure App Service work, fully managed, but still flexible enough to integrate into a wide range of enterprise systems. An admin creates a new user through the Azure portal for their organization. After the user is created, the admin wants to share the login credentials. What will the admin see upon successful creation of the account? Select one answer. A QR code for password setup. B, a permanent password the user must retain. C, a temporary password to give to the user. D, a link to My Apps with automatic sign-in. The correct answer is C, a temporary password to give to the user. Let's go through the reasoning. When a new user is created in the Azure portal, the system generates a temporary password that the admin can share with the user. This password must be changed at the first sign-in, ensuring that the final credentials are private and secure. On the other hand, QR codes are reserved for scenarios like passwordless sign-in or MFA registration, not account creation. A permanent password is never issued at creation because it bypasses the enforced password change policy. Likewise, a direct link to My Apps with automatic sign-in is not possible without prior authentication. This temporary password approach balances ease of onboarding with strong security practices. What does Microsoft Entra ID provide to enable identity federation between organizations? Select one answer. A. Built-in support for external DNS record management. B. Support for self-signed certificates and static IPs. C. Ability to configure trust relationships with other Entra tenants. D. SAML-based GPO replication between tenants. The correct answer is C. Ability to configure trust relationships with other Entra tenants. Let's understand why. Microsoft Entra ID supports cross-tenant B2B federation, which allows organizations to establish trust relationships so external users can securely access shared resources without creating entirely separate accounts. This setup is similar to having a guest access system that still respects security policies. On the other hand, Entra does not manage DNS records directly, so option A is incorrect. Support for self-signed certificates and static IPs, option B, is unrelated to tenant federation. Lastly, Entra does not use or replicate group policy objects, making option D irrelevant. Therefore, configuring trust relationships is the key feature that enables secure identity federation between different Entra tenants. For each application deployment phase, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Analyzes and reduces compatibility issues across applications. Application inventory and compatibility packages apps using installers or virtualization tools. Application packaging includes deploying new apps and installing new versions. Application lifecycle support uses Microsoft tools to gather software asset information. Application inventory and compatibility applies updates and ensures app continuity. Application lifecycle support. Let's go through the explanation together. Application inventory and compatibility involves assessing the current application environment, identifying compatibility issues, and standardizing versions, often in preparation for OS upgrades. Application packaging refers to preparing apps for deployment, which can involve creating MSI installers, using virtualization technologies like AppV, or building silent install packages. Application lifecycle support goes beyond deployment. It covers the entire operational lifespan of an app, including updates, upgrades, and patching to keep it functional and secure. The unused options, such as App Store publishing, apply to public app distribution and not enterprise deployment, while network security configuration belongs to device or network planning, not application deployment. For each retirement task, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Coordinating device collection with new system distribution, computer pickup, erasing sensitive data before resale or disposal, data removal, logging devices removed from inventory or sold, administrative processing, physically preparing items for transportation, packing and shipping, evaluating resale or donation value for tax accounting purposes, resale valuation. Now let's go through the explanation. Computer pickup is the process of retrieving devices, often coordinated with the rollout of new equipment, sometimes scheduled outside regular hours, to minimize disruption. Data removal ensures that all sensitive company information is securely wiped before the hardware leaves the organization, protecting against data breaches. Administrative processing involves recording the removal or sale of devices in inventory and accounting systems. Packing and shipping is about physically preparing the equipment, boxing it, and transporting it, often from a designated dock or staging area. Finally, resale valuation assigns a financial value for resale or donation, which is important for accounting and tax purposes. Unused options like device imaging belong to deployment, not retirement, while remote support is linked to ongoing operational help, not decommissioning. Arrange the following steps in the correct order to create a new group in Microsoft Entra ID using the Azure portal. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Navigate to Microsoft Entra ID. Go to Groups. Select New Group. Choose the group type, Security or Microsoft 365. Enter name and description. Here's how it works. The process starts by navigating to Microsoft Entra ID in the Azure portal, which gives you access to the identity management settings. From there, you go to the Groups section where you manage and create groups. Next, selecting New Group begins the creation process. After that, you must choose the group type, either Security for access control or Microsoft 365 for collaboration tools. Finally, you enter the group's name and description to define it clearly before saving. This sequence is fixed by the Azure Portal's interface, ensuring a consistent and repeatable setup process. What is one reason IT pros use virtual machines during the build phase of deployment testing? Select one answer. A, to deploy final images to end-user devices. B, to simulate deployment environments before physical rollout. C, to upgrade VMs instead of physical machines. D, to replace Windows Autopilot. The correct answer is B, to simulate deployment environments before physical rollout. Let's break it down. Virtual machines are ideal for early testing because they allow IT teams to validate configurations and deployment processes without risking real hardware. This controlled environment helps catch compatibility or configuration issues before the actual rollout, saving time and resources. Deploying final images to end-user devices isn't the purpose here, as VMs are strictly for testing, not production deployment. Upgrading VMs instead of physical machines isn't part of the deployment testing goal. It's about simulation, not replacement. Finally, Windows Autopilot isn't replaced by VM testing. Rather, VM testing complements Autopilot by ensuring deployment profiles work correctly before being applied to physical devices. Which class is excluded from the Microsoft Entra schema but present in ADDS? Select one answer. A, group class. B, application class. C, device class. D, computer class. The correct answer is D, computer class. Let's explain why. In Active Directory domain services, the computer class is a standard object type used to represent and manage computer accounts within the domain. However, Microsoft Entra ID does not use this traditional computer object type. Instead, it handles devices differently through its device class. Group, application, and device classes are all present in the Entra schema and are essential for managing identities, apps, and registered devices in the cloud. This difference reflects how Entra ID is designed for cloud-based identity management rather than traditional on-premises directory services. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Microsoft Workplace Join must be used to support Windows 7 devices in hybrid join. True. Workplace Join is built into all Windows versions by default. False. Down-level devices must be configured differently for Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join. True. Microsoft Workplace Join can be downloaded from the Microsoft Download Center. True. Let's explain why these are correct. Microsoft Workplace Join is necessary for older systems such as Windows 7 to participate in a hybrid join scenario because those systems lack the native capabilities found in newer Windows versions. However, Workplace Join is not automatically included in every Windows version, particularly older ones. It needs to be installed manually. Down-level devices, which are systems running older OS versions, require unique configuration steps to make them compatible with Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join. Finally, Microsoft makes the Workplace Join installer available through the Microsoft Download Center, allowing organizations to manually deploy it where needed. Which two are true about the manual deployment of the Configuration Manager client? Select two answers. A, it uses the ccmsetup.exe file with optional parameters. B, it supports installation using an included MSI file. C, it can be automated using a PowerShell DSC configuration. D, it typically installs through the Microsoft Store. E, it is ideal for deploying to 1,000+ devices quickly. The correct answers are A and B. Here's why. Manual deployment of the Configuration Manager client often involves running the ccmsetup.exe file with optional parameters to customize the installation process. Additionally, the client package includes an MSI file that can be used as an alternative installation method. On the other hand, PowerShell DSC automation is not part of the manual deployment approach. It's an automation method. Installing through the Microsoft Store is not supported for this client, and manual deployment is not practical for large-scale rollouts as it's too time-consuming without automation. Which statement is true about how Configuration Manager displays a device's operating system version? Select one answer. A, you must connect remotely to the device to view its OS build. B, you must run a remote PowerShell script to pull OS version. C, the OS build is collected through the client's hardware inventory. D, you can only view the OS version for co-managed devices. The correct answer is C, the OS build is collected through the client's hardware inventory. Let's go through why. Configuration Manager automatically gathers OS build information as part of its hardware inventory process. This means you don't need to connect remotely to the device or run any scripts. The data is sent back to the console for you to view. The process isn't limited to co-managed devices either. Any client with inventory enabled will report the OS build. This automation ensures that admins always have an up-to-date view of the operating system version across all managed devices. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Android work profiles allow IT to manage personal apps installed on the device. False. The Intune Company Portal app must be downloaded before an Android device can be enrolled. True. Only corporate-owned Android devices can be enrolled in Intune. False. The Android Enterprise Fully Managed method gives IT full control over the device. True. Let's break down the reasoning. Android work profiles don't give IT control over personal apps. They only allow IT to manage the work section of the device, keeping personal data separate. The Intune Company Portal app, however, is a required step for Android enrollment, as it handles the device registration and policy application. Enrollment is not limited to corporate-owned devices. BYOD Android devices can also be enrolled using the work profile method. Finally, the Android Enterprise Fully Managed method does provide IT with full control, making it ideal for corporate-owned single-user devices where complete policy enforcement is needed. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join is used when you want to automatically register on-premises domain-joined devices with Microsoft Entra ID. This approach supports environments where you need group policy and have existing Active Directory infrastructure. Now let's go through the explanation. Hybrid Join is designed specifically for automatically registering domain-joined devices, extending their capabilities into the cloud through Entra ID. It's especially useful when group policy is still active in the organization because it works seamlessly with that management approach. This setup also assumes that you already have an existing Active Directory environment, which forms the foundation for integrating with cloud identity services. By combining these elements, organizations can bridge their on-premises identity infrastructure with cloud-based management. Arrange the following steps involved in a client push deployment of the Microsoft Configuration Manager client in the correct order. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Discover devices using Active Directory LDAP, initialize client push installation, copy installation files to the target device, automatically begin client installation. Now let's move into the explanation. In a client push deployment, the process begins by discovering devices through Active Directory LDAP, which allows Configuration Manager to locate devices within specific organizational units. Once these devices are identified, the system moves to initialize the client push installation, signaling that deployment should begin. Following that, installation files are copied over to the target device to prepare for setup. Finally, once those files are in place, the client installation starts automatically, completing the deployment without further manual intervention. This sequence ensures an organized and efficient rollout. For each MDM configuration task, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Default Intune setting when MDM isn't configured is none. Section in Intune portal to set MDM authority is device enrollment. Required to manage iOS and macOS devices is Apple MDM push certificate. Certificate generated via Apple Certificate Portal is Apple Sign Certificate. Now let's go into the explanation. None is the default state when no MDM authority is set, meaning Intune is not managing any devices yet. Device enrollment is the section in the Intune portal where you configure MDM authority settings. Apple MDM push certificate is needed for Intune to communicate and manage Apple devices, and it's obtained by creating a request in Intune. Apple Signed Certificate is the final certificate you get from the Apple Certificate Portal after uploading the certificate signing request. And this is what enables secure device management for iOS and macOS in Intune. Your company uses a custom domain, contoso.com, and you want to simplify Windows device enrollment for users. You don't have Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2, but you want to avoid asking users to manually enter the MDM server name. What should you do? Select one answer. A. Configure MDM user scope to all. B. Add a TXT DNS record for the MDM discover URL. C. Create a CNAME DNS record that redirects to the Intune MDM endpoint. D. Use Microsoft Defender to auto-enroll devices. The correct answer is C. Create a CNAME DNS record that redirects to the Intune MDM endpoint. Now let's move into the explanation. Creating a CNAME record like enterpriseenrollment.contoso.com directs devices straight to the Intune MDM server, which removes the need for users to type the server name manually. Although setting the MDM user scope to all allows automatic enrollment, it still requires the correct server information unless a DNS redirect is configured. TXT DNS records are intended for domain verification rather than redirecting traffic, so they won't achieve the goal here. Likewise, Microsoft Defender focuses on protecting devices, not on facilitating MDM enrollment. Therefore, using a CNAME record is the most effective and user-friendly method. Which two statements are true about Device Enrollment Manager accounts in Intune? Select two answers. A DEM account can enroll up to 1,000 devices. B, DEM should not be assigned Intune Administrator rights. C, DE-enrolled devices support user-based VPP licenses for iOS apps. DEM-enrolled devices automatically appear under all admin users' portals. The correct answers are A, DEM account can enroll up to 1,000 devices, and B, DEM should not be assigned Intune Administrator rights. Now let's move into the explanation. A DEM account is designed to handle bulk enrollments, which is why it can enroll up to 1,000 devices, making it suitable for scenarios like setting up devices for a new department. However, for security purposes, assigning Intune Administrator rights to a DEM account is not recommended because it should have restricted permissions to minimize risk. On the other hand, user-based VPP licenses for iOS require an Apple ID, which is not compatible with DEM-enrolled devices, and devices enrolled by a DEM are only visible to that specific account rather than appearing in all admin portals. Therefore, the combination of A and B accurately reflects the true statements about DEM accounts in Intune. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Custom configuration profiles for Apple devices are created using Apple Configurator and must match the OS version of the target device to avoid issues. Now let's go through the explanation. Apple Configurator is a tool that allows administrators to create custom configuration profiles for Apple devices, which can then be imported into Intune for deployment. This is particularly useful when organizations need to apply specific settings or restrictions across a fleet of iPads or Macs. However, it is critical that these profiles match the OS version of the target devices, because mismatched versions can cause the profile to fail, leading to configuration errors. Other options such as VPN portal, Android firmware, edition upgrade, and Microsoft Store are unrelated to creating or deploying Apple configuration profiles, which is why they are not correct in this context. You are a Microsoft Entra admin tasked with reviewing enterprise state roaming activity and data cleanup schedules. What two steps or facts are relevant to this scenario? Select two answers. A, enable devices syncing settings under a user's Azure profile. B, enterprise state roaming deletes stale data that hasn't been accessed in over a year. C, enable Internet Explorer sync through Credential Manager. D, enterprise state roaming syncs passwords between Edge and Internet Explorer. The correct answers are A and B. Now let's go through the explanation. Enabling devices syncing settings under a user's Azure profile allows administrators to see which devices are actively syncing, providing better oversight of user activity. Additionally, enterprise state roaming automatically deletes stale data that hasn't been accessed in over a year, which helps maintain clean and efficient storage. On the other hand, enabling Internet Explorer sync through Credential Manager is irrelevant because ESR doesn't integrate with Internet Explorer's password storage. Similarly, syncing passwords between Edge and Internet Explorer is not part of ESR since Edge Sync is separate and doesn't rely on Windows Credential Manager. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Folder redirection supports redirecting up to 13 predefined folders. True. If folder redirection is removed, content must be moved back to the local profile. False. Enterprise state roaming supports syncing desktop app settings. False. Microsoft Edge Sync is part of the Windows Sync ecosystem. False. Let's move on to the explanation. Folder redirection can handle up to 13 predefined folders, including important ones like Desktop and Start menu, which makes it a versatile tool for managing user data locations. However, if folder redirection is removed, there is no strict requirement to move the files back to the local profile, as administrators can choose to leave them on the network. Enterprise state roaming only syncs Windows and UWP app settings, not desktop app settings, which limits its scope. Lastly, Microsoft Edge Sync operates independently and across platforms, meaning it is not tied into the Windows ESR Sync ecosystem. When configuring a custom OMA URI setting in Intune, which two data types can you specify for the value? Select two answers: A, string; B, Boolean; C, group policy; D, JSON table; E, exchange sync profile. The correct answers are string and Boolean. Let's go through the explanation. String values are widely used in OMA URI settings because they can store text-based configuration details like names, URLs, or identifiers. Boolean values, on the other hand, work perfectly for true or false scenarios, such as enabling or disabling a feature. In contrast, group policy is a configuration framework rather than a data type. JSON table isn't a supported format for OMA URI profiles, and exchange sync profile refers to a device capability, not a data type. Match each method for minimizing user profile size with its correct effect or mechanism. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Prevents syncing when user exceeds storage on the file server. Use quotas. Moves large folders like documents out of the profile. Redirect folders. Sets a fixed limit using group policy and notifies user when exceeded. Group policy setting, limit profile size, can be applied using File Server Resource Manager on shared folders. Use quotas. Here's the explanation. Use quotas is a method where storage limits are enforced either locally or on shared folders. When users exceed this limit, synchronization stops and they are notified. Redirect folders helps reduce profile size by moving large directories like documents outside the profile location using group policy. Group policy setting, limit profile size allows administrators to set a maximum size for the profile and warn users if they exceed it, helping to avoid roaming profile issues. Finally, using quotas through File Server Resource Manager reinforces the same storage restriction method, but focuses on server-side enforcement. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Windows devices enrolled in Intune use Windows Information Protection for app-level data security, whereas Android and iOS use Intune App Protection policies. Now let's go through the explanation. Windows Information Protection is Microsoft's solution designed specifically for protecting data at the application level on Windows-enrolled devices. It helps separate personal and corporate data, ensuring corporate information stays secure, even if the device is used for personal tasks. Meanwhile, Intune App Protection policies serve the same purpose for Android and iOS devices, safeguarding app-level data without requiring full device enrollment. This is particularly useful when employees use their personal phones for work, but still need corporate apps to stay secure. On the other hand, options like Intune MDM Baseline focus on device configuration. BitLocker protects the entire drive rather than individual apps, and conditional access rules only control when and how apps are accessed, not the actual data inside them. By understanding these distinctions, you can apply the right policy to the right platform effectively. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. The app report shows app protection status by platform, while the user report shows compliance and activity for a selected individual user. Now let's move on to the explanation. The app report provides an overview of protection status at both the platform and app level, showing whether apps are in a protected or unprotected state. This is particularly useful when you want to evaluate overall compliance trends across an organization. On the other hand, the user report focuses specifically on a single user, giving details about their MAM policy compliance, app usage, and check-in history. This makes it helpful for troubleshooting individual issues. Other options like Device Policy Report or Endpoint Security Report deal with MDM and security baselines rather than MAM. And Managed Apps List or Rooted Device Alert are used for different purposes, not reporting. Understanding which report to use helps target the right scope when reviewing app protection compliance. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. You can assign a web app to a group by linking the URL in Intune. True app categories can only be assigned to one app at a time. False. Assigning an app as not applicable causes it to be hidden in the company portal. True. You must upload all apps to Intune Cloud Storage before assigning. False. Now let's go through the explanation. Web apps can indeed be deployed in Intune by simply providing their URL, making it easy to roll out without uploading installation files. In contrast, app categories are flexible, allowing a single app to belong to multiple categories, which helps in better organization and filtering. Marking an app as not applicable hides it from the company portal and stops deployment, which is useful when certain users or groups don't need access. Finally, uploading apps to Intune Cloud Storage is only necessary for line-of-business applications. Store apps and web apps don't require this step since they are fetched directly from their source. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Microsoft 365 apps deployed using Intune can include Visio or Project if licensed. True. Multiple required app assignments merge all selected apps together without conflict. False. You must download the Office installation files manually before deploying with Intune. False. Shared computer activation is mandatory for single-user device deployments. False. Here's the explanation. Microsoft Visio and Project can be included in the Microsoft 365 apps deployment through Intune when the appropriate licenses are owned and chosen during configuration. In contrast, multiple required app assignments don't combine. Later assignments replace earlier ones. There's also no need to manually download Office installation files because Intune already hosts them. Lastly, shared computer activation is only needed when multiple users will sign in to the same device, so it isn't mandatory for single-user setups. For each Intune Mobile Application Management (MAM) concept, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it against its description in the option column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Protects company data at the app level, regardless of device enrollment. App protection policies. Applies policies only when the app is used in a work context. Work context isolation allows app management on devices enrolled with third-party EMMs. MAM without enrollment supports only Android and iOS platforms. Platform-specific support prevents saving company data to personal storage. Data loss prevention. Here's how these matchups work. App protection policies secure company data directly within the app, regardless of whether the device is under management, tying control to the user's identity. Work context isolation ensures policies apply only when the app operates in a business context, so personal use remains unaffected. MAM without enrollment gives administrators the manage apps on devices outside Intune's enrollment, even those managed by third-party tools. Platform-specific support is a reminder that some protections work exclusively with Android and iOS. Data loss prevention focuses on blocking the saving of corporate information to personal storage risks, reducing both intentional and accidental leaks. Match each Microsoft Store app's update condition or policy to its corresponding immutable behavior. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Automatic updates for UWP apps. Turn off automatic download and install, disabled or not configured. Win32 app installed manually, then deployed via Intune. Intune takes over management of already installed app. Provisioned UWP app in system context. App remains installed for all users, even if uninstalled by one. Disable all Store apps policy set to enabled. Blocks launch of all Microsoft Store apps. Now let's go through the explanation. Automatic updates for UWP apps require the policy turn off automatic download and install of updates to be disabled or not configured so that apps can update automatically. Otherwise, they won't update without manual intervention. Next, when a Win32 app is installed manually and later deployed via Intune, Intune will assume management of that app if it is marked as required, avoiding unnecessary reinstallation. Similarly, a provisioned UWP app in the system context will stay installed for every user, even if one user removes it, because provisioning applies at the device level. Finally, enabling the Disable All Store Apps policy completely blocks the launch of all Microsoft Store apps, including built-in ones, which also means no store-based updates can run. Arrange the steps in the process where Intune takes over management of a manually installed Microsoft Store Win32 app. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. User installs the app manually. Admin publishes the app as required in Intune. Intune assumes management of the app. app updates are handled automatically. Now let's go through the explanation. The process begins when a user installs the Microsoft Store Win32 app manually, meaning it is already present on the device before Intune deployment. Next, the admin publishes the same app in Intune, marking it as required, which signals Intune to check for that app on the device. Once detected, Intune takes over its management without needing to reinstall it. Finally, because the app is now under Intune's control, updates are applied automatically as long as the device meets store policy and connectivity requirements. You manage mobile application security for a large organization using Intune. As more apps are added and assigned to users, you need a way to confirm which ones support MAM policies to ensure consistent enforcement across the environment. What should you use to achieve this goal? Select one answer. A, the Microsoft Defender dashboard. B, the Intune App Protection Policy Report. C, the Mobile Device Compliance List. D, Azure Monitor Workbooks. The correct answer is B, the Intune App Protection Policy Report. Now let's explain. The Intune App Protection Policy Report provides a consolidated list of all apps with MAM policies applied, allowing admins to verify coverage and identify gaps in protection. In contrast, the Microsoft Defender dashboard focuses on device threat protection and antivirus, not MAM policy visibility. The Mobile Device Compliance List applies to device-level compliance and doesn't indicate MAM policy support for apps. Azure Monitor Workbooks are designed for general monitoring and analytics, not for app protection visibility. Therefore, the Intune App Protection Policy Report is the best choice. What does Intune allow you to do when a new version of an app becomes available? Select one answer. A, push app updates manually through the company portal. B, rebuild the app configuration policy from scratch. C, deploy the new version using the existing deployment workflow. D, remove the old app before deploying the new one. The correct answer is C, deploy the new version using the existing deployment workflow. Here's why. Intune allows you to update an app by using the same deployment workflow already in place, meaning you don't need to rebuild or reconfigure from scratch. Pushing updates manually through the company portal isn't required because Intune centrally manages updates for all assigned devices. Rebuilding the app configuration policy from scratch is unnecessary since existing policies can be reused or modified. Removing the old app before installing the new version is also not required, as updates can be applied in place. Therefore, using the existing deployment workflow is the most efficient and supported method. Your organization uses Microsoft Intune to deploy Microsoft Store Win32 apps. A third-party app shows a Win32 banner in Intune, but some users report failed installs due to blocked network access. What should you do next? Select one answer. A, check whether the app is a UWP app instead. B, request app content to be hosted on Microsoft servers. C, contact the app publisher to confirm external content network requirements. D, reinstall the app as available instead of required. The correct answer is C. Contact the app publisher to confirm external content network requirements. Here's why. Microsoft Store Win32 apps in preview often require access to the publisher's own infrastructure for content delivery, meaning firewall settings might need to be adjusted. The app already displays a Win32 banner, so checking if it's a UWP app is unnecessary. Requesting Microsoft to host the content isn't an option because it remains with the publisher. Changing the assignment type from required to available won't fix blocked network access if the firewall is already preventing the download. Therefore, verifying the network requirements directly with the app publisher is the correct next step. Which two statements correctly describe how Intune handles app updates for unenrolled devices? Select two answers. A, Intune automatically pushes app updates to unenrolled devices. B, users must go to the company portal to install updates. C, updates require reinstallation of the app via Windows Store. D, the device does not need to be enrolled to receive updated apps via company portal. The correct answers are B, users must go to the company portal to install updates, and D, the device does not need to be enrolled to receive updated apps via company portal. Here's the reasoning. For unenrolled devices, Intune cannot push updates automatically, so users must manually initiate them from the company portal. However, devices do not need to be fully enrolled to get these updates. Access to the portal is enough. Reinstallation through the Windows Store isn't necessary because updates are managed directly in the company portal. Likewise, automatic push updates aren't possible without enrollment. Therefore, the right statements are that users must go to the portal and enrollment is not required. Which two app assignment types are supported for devices that are not enrolled with Intune? Select two answers. A. Required. B. Uninstall. C. Available with or without enrollment. D. Assign to user groups. E. Receive app updates from Intune. The correct answers are C. Available with or without enrollment, and D. Assign to user groups. Here's the reasoning. Available with or without enrollment lets you assign apps to users even if their devices aren't enrolled, giving flexibility for app distribution. Assigning to user groups is also supported regardless of device enrollment, allowing broad or targeted access. In contrast, required apps need the device to be enrolled. Uninstall cannot be done on unenrolled devices, and receiving app updates from Intune is limited to enrolled devices only. Therefore, the correct choices are the ones that work without requiring enrollment. Arrange the following steps for creating and deploying an application using Configuration Manager in the correct order. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Open the Configuration Manager console and navigate to Application Management. Launch the Create Application wizard. Automatically detect information from the installation.msi file. Provide general information such as app name and publisher. Specify the installation program command line. Review the summary and complete the wizard. Now that we have gone through the question and answers, let's move into the explanation. First, you open the Configuration Manager console and head to Application Management, which sets the stage for the entire process. Then you launch the Create Application wizard to initiate app creation. Next, you automatically detect information from the .msi file, which helps pre-fill critical details. After that, you provide general information like the app name and publisher so it is properly identified. Following this, you specify the installation program command line to define how the application will be installed. Finally, you review the summary to confirm everything is correct and then complete the wizard. This logical flow ensures smooth deployment from start to finish. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Windows Hello for Business is supported only on Windows 10 or later versions. True Intune is the only cloud-based system to configure Windows Hello for Business on cloud-only Entra-joined devices. True. During a pilot, you must enable self-service password reset for all users in the tenant. False. Microsoft Entra ID protection evaluates user location and sign-in behavior to detect risk. True. Now that we have gone through the questions and answers, let's move into the explanation. Windows Hello for Business works only on Windows 10 or later, so older systems are automatically excluded. Intune remains the only supported cloud-based method for configuring it on cloud-only Entra-joined devices, making it essential in such setups. During a pilot phase, instead of enabling self-service password reset for all users, it is best practice to limit it to a smaller test group to control variables. Finally, Microsoft Entra ID protection actively monitors factors like a user's geographic location and their sign-in patterns to detect anomalies and assess potential risks. This approach enhances security while minimizing unnecessary disruptions. Complete the sentence by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. During a self-service password reset pilot, it is recommended to enable it only for a smaller group and later expand to all users after confirming functionality. Let's go through why this is the correct approach. When piloting self-service password reset, starting with a small controlled group allows you to test the process, identify any configuration issues, and gather feedback without affecting the entire organization. This minimizes risk and ensures that any problems are resolved early. Once you've confirmed that everything works smoothly, you can confidently roll it out to all users. This phased deployment is a common best practice in IT because it balances safety with efficiency, much like testing new safety measures in one branch of a company before applying them to every location. Which two Microsoft licensing tiers offer full Microsoft Entra multi-factor authentication features? Select two answers. A. Microsoft Entra ID P1. B. Microsoft Entra ID Free. C. Microsoft Entra ID P2. D. Microsoft 365 E3, subset only. The correct answers are A. Microsoft Entra ID P1 and C. Microsoft Entra ID P2. Here's why. Microsoft Entra ID P1 includes all the core multi-factor authentication capabilities, making it suitable for most enterprise needs. Meanwhile, Microsoft Entra ID P2 not only has the full MFA feature set, but also offers advanced protection features like risk-based conditional access, which adds another layer of security. On the other hand, Microsoft Entra ID Free is quite limited, offering little or no MFA capability, and Microsoft 365 E3 only includes a subset of the Entra MFA features, meaning it doesn't provide the complete package. In practical terms, if your organization needs robust MFA with advanced security controls, P1 or P2 are the tiers to choose. Which of the following is true about Windows Hello for business deployment? Select one answer. It can be set up by a single administrator without collaboration. B, it requires coordination across teams due to its distributed nature. C, it is a legacy system requiring domain functional level 2008 R2. D, it can only be deployed using PowerShell scripts. The correct answer is B. It requires coordination across teams due to its distributed nature. Here's why. Windows Hello for Business is a distributed system that integrates multiple technologies like identity services, device management, and certificate infrastructure. This means deployment isn't just a one-person job. It requires collaboration between teams handling identity, device configuration, and security policies. In contrast, saying it can be set up by a single administrator oversimplifies the complexity. It's also not a legacy system. Windows Hello for Business is modern and supported on Windows 10 and above. Finally, while PowerShell can be used, most organizations prefer group policy or Intune for deployment. In real-world enterprise settings, this cross-team planning ensures smooth implementation and ongoing support. What happens when a VPN client is set to use the automatic protocol configuration in Windows? Select one answer. A, the VPN client will ask the user to select a protocol every time. B, the VPN client will try tunneling protocols in order from least secure to most secure. C, the VPN client will attempt supported tunneling protocols starting with the most secure. D, the VPN client only supports IKE v2 when set to automatic. The correct answer is C. The VPN client will attempt supported tunneling protocols starting with the most secure. Here's the explanation. When set to automatic, the VPN client works through the available built-in tunneling protocols in sequence, beginning with the one that provides the highest security. This ensures that if the most secure option isn't available, the client can still connect using the next best protocol without manual intervention. It's not going to prompt the user to choose each time, which eliminates unnecessary steps. It also doesn't start with the least secure protocol. Security comes first here. Finally, it's not restricted to IKE v2. Multiple protocols can be attempted automatically, making the process both secure and flexible in real-world deployments. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Compliance policies are used to define the rules that a device must follow to be considered secure, while conditional access policies determine whether access should be granted based on a combination of conditions. Let's break this down. Compliance policies focus on the technical requirements a device must meet, such as running a specific OS version, having encryption enabled, or ensuring the device isn't jailbroken. These rules help maintain a secure baseline. On the other hand, conditional access policies act like the decision-making layer. They look at signals such as device compliance status, user location, and sign-in risk before allowing access. For example, even if a device meets all compliance requirements, access might still be blocked if the sign-in attempt is coming from an unusual location, adding an extra layer of security. This combination ensures both the device's security posture and the context of access are verified. For each always-on VPN concept, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it against its defining characteristic. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Provides seamless VPN connectivity without user interaction, matches always-on VPN connection behavior. Uses IKE v2, SSTP, or L2TP IPsec as supported tunneling protocols, matches always-on VPN tunneling protocols. Can be deployed using Intune, Configuration Manager, or PowerShell matches always-on VPN deployment tools. Requires an XML profile to be deployed to clients. matches always-on VPN profile requirements. Not managed using group policy or ADDS matches always-on VPN management limitations. Now let's understand this better. Always-on VPN connection behavior means the VPN runs in the background, connecting automatically without user prompts, ensuring uninterrupted secure access. The tunneling protocols like ICAKE-v2, SSTPs, and L2TP IPsec define the supported secure communication methods. Deployment tools such as Intune, Configuration Manager, and PowerShell provide flexibility in rolling out configurations across devices. The XML profile requirement ensures all necessary connection settings are consistently delivered to clients. Finally, the management limitation highlights that always-on VPN isn't managed through traditional group policy or Active Directory domain services, relying instead on modern management methods. Arrange the following steps to connect Power BI Desktop to the Intune data warehouse using an OData feed. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Sign in to the Endpoint Manager portal and retrieve the OData URL. Open Power BI Desktop and go to Home, Get Data. Select OData Feed and paste the copied URL. Authenticate using Organizational Account. Select the desired tables, create dashboards and reports in Power BI. Now let's explain this step by step. First, you need to sign in to the Endpoint Manager portal to retrieve the OData URL, as this link is your gateway to the data. Next, opening Power BI Desktop and navigating to Home, Get Data sets up the environment for your connection. Then, by selecting OData Feed and pasting the URL, you establish the actual data link. After that, authentication with your organizational account ensures secure access to the data source. Once authenticated, you can select the desired tables to bring in the relevant data sets. Finally, creating dashboards and reports in Power BI allows you to visualize and analyze the information effectively. In practice, this flow ensures that each step logically builds on the previous one, making the connection smooth and functional. Which two export formats are valid when exporting EFS certificates? Select two answers. A. .pfx file with private key, BCR file without private key, C. TXT with encryption summary, D. ISO boot image. The correct answers are A. PFX file with private key, and B. .file without private key. Let's go through the explanation. A PFX file with private key is essential for full backup and recovery because it contains both the public and private keys needed to restore encrypted data. In contrast, a .cr file without private key is used when you only need to share the public key, for example, in scenarios where recipients need to encrypt data but should not have decryption capabilities. On the other hand, a TXT with encryption summary is not a valid certificate format and cannot be used for EFS exports. Similarly, an .iso boot image is intended for OS deployment rather than certificate handling. By using the correct formats, you ensure both compatibility and security in certificate management. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. The MBAM version with full support for BitLocker recovery and reporting is 2.5 with Service Pack 1, and it integrates with Endpoint Configuration Manager. Now let's go through the explanation. Version 2.5 with Service Pack 1 is the most recent release of MBAM that offers complete enterprise-level support for BitLocker, including both recovery and detailed reporting capabilities. Furthermore, it integrates seamlessly with Endpoint Configuration Manager, allowing organizations to manage encryption compliance, deploy policies, and generate centralized reports from a single management console. In contrast, older versions like 1.0 SP2 lack modern features, and tools like the BitLocker console or Windows Security Center cannot provide the same comprehensive management and reporting functionality. By using the latest version and integration with Endpoint Configuration Manager, enterprises can ensure secure and efficient BitLocker management. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To fully configure Cloud Discovery, go to the Data Sources tab to add inputs, and then use the Log Collectors tab to configure how they are processed. Here's the explanation. In Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, the Data Sources tab is the entry point for adding logs that will be analyzed for cloud activity. This is where you specify which network devices or services will provide the traffic data. Then, the Log Collectors tab is used to set up how these logs are ingested, processed, and forwarded to the analysis engine, ensuring the pipeline works smoothly. For example, you might configure a firewall to send traffic logs to the log collector, which then securely forwards them for processing. Options like Activity Log or Event Hub are not part of this setup process for cloud discovery. So the correct sequence always begins with adding your data sources and then configuring the log collectors. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. After licensing Defender for cloud apps, organizations receive an activation email, true. You must manually download and install the Defender for Cloud Apps agent, false. A link to the Defender for Cloud Apps portal is included in the activation email, true. You must wait for Microsoft support to unlock your portal access, false. Here's the explanation. Once licensed, the activation email serves as your entry point, containing both instructions and a direct portal link, which confirms the first statement as true. However, there is no separate agent to install since the platform is browser-based and integrates with existing services, making the second statement false. The inclusion of the portal link in the email helps organizations access the console immediately, validating the third statement as true. Lastly, portal activation is triggered by the user upon receiving the license email, so there's no need to wait for Microsoft support, which makes the final statement false. Which two inputs are required to define network boundaries in a WIP policy? Select two answers. A, domain suffixes separated by commas. B, URLs separated by pipes. C, Hyper-V hostnames. D, IPsec tunnels. The correct answers are A and B. Now let's go into the explanation. Domain suffixes separated by commas are used to identify and protect internal or trusted domains, such as contoso.com or fabricam.local, ensuring that work data remains within approved boundaries. Similarly, URLs separated by pipes help define cloud resources and neutral endpoints, making sure the policy knows exactly where to enforce data protection. On the other hand, Hyper-V hostnames are unrelated to WIP boundary configuration, as they deal with virtual machine environments rather than data boundaries. Likewise, IPsec tunnels focus on encrypting data in transit but do not play a role in defining WIP policy boundaries. This is why the combination of domain suffixes and URL entries is essential for accurate boundary definition. Arrange the steps a user follows when enabling BitLocker to go on a USB flash drive. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Insert the USB drive and open File Explorer. Right-click the drive and select Turn on BitLocker. Choose an unlock method such as a password or smart card. Save or print the recovery key. Confirm settings to begin encryption. Now let's explain. The process always begins by connecting the USB drive and accessing it through File Explorer, as BitLocker must be enabled on a detected removable drive. Then, enabling BitLocker through the context menu allows you to proceed with securing the drive. Selecting an unlock method is critical because it defines how authorized users will access the data. Saving or printing the recovery key ensures you have a fallback option if you forget the password. Finally, confirming the settings starts the encryption process, locking down the drive so that only authorized access is possible. For each component or feature related to Windows Defender System Guard, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Ensures only trusted Windows and third-party drivers start during boot. Boot time integrity enforcement. Uses TPM 2.0 to capture integrity measurements at startup, TPM-based integrity measurement. Provides remote verification of device integrity, remote attestation. Protects sensitive services like Credential Guard and virtual TPM at runtime, virtualization-based security container. Now let's go through the explanation. Boot time integrity enforcement ensures that only trusted signed Windows files and drivers can start during the boot process, preventing malicious rootkits from compromising the system early. Next, TPM-based integrity measurement works at startup, capturing integrity data in a secure, hardware-isolated way so it cannot be tampered with. Moving on, remote attestation enables remote systems such as Intune to verify the device's integrity state and take action if it's compromised. Finally, virtualization-based security container isolates sensitive components like Credential Guard, keeping them secure even if an attacker gains high-level access. This combination ensures both the startup process and runtime components maintain strong integrity. Match each Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps requirement or condition to its correct description. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Required for each protected user in an organization. Correct match. License assignment. Grants permission to set up Defender for cloud apps across Microsoft Cloud Apps. Correct match. Global or Security Administrator role. Browsers officially supported for running the Defender for Cloud Apps portal. Correct match. Modern supported web browsers provides access to Defender for Cloud Apps portal via an activation email. Correct match. Activation email. Now let's explain. License assignment is necessary because each user must have a valid license to be protected under Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, making it a compliance requirement. Similarly, the Global or Security Administrator role is essential because only users with this role in Microsoft Entra ID or Microsoft 365 can configure Defender for Cloud Apps regardless of where the role was assigned. Furthermore, modern supported web browsers such as Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Firefox, or Safari are required to ensure full compatibility and functionality of the portal. Finally, the activation email is sent after license assignment, providing the link and instructions for first-time access to the Defender for Cloud Apps portal, completing the onboarding process. Which two settings are considered optional but configurable in a WIP policy? Select two answers. A. Use Azure RMS for WIP. B. Show WIP icon overlay in File Explorer. C. Encrypt the system volume with BitLocker. D. Configure Smart Card Logon. The correct answers are A. Use Azure RMS for WIP, and B. Show WIP icon overlay in File Explorer. Now let's explain. Use Azure RMS for WIP allows integration with Azure Rights Management, enabling encryption and policy-based protection for sensitive data. This is optional in WIP, but can enhance security. Likewise, Show WIP icon overlay in File Explorer provides a visual indicator on protected files, making it easier for users to identify which data is under policy control. On the other hand, Encrypt the system volume with BitLocker is outside the scope of WIP and pertains to full disk encryption, while Configure Smart Card Logon is an authentication feature unrelated to WIP policy configuration. You are tasked with onboarding 500 Windows devices to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint in a hybrid environment. The organization uses both Configuration Manager and Microsoft Intune. What is the most efficient way to onboard all devices? Select one answer. A. Use Microsoft Defender Application Guard. B. Onboard manually using local scripts. C. Use Configuration Manager and Intune integration. D. Enable Smart Screen via registry. The correct answer is C. Use Configuration Manager and Intune integration. Now let's explain. Using Configuration Manager and Intune integration is the most efficient approach because it allows automated large-scale onboarding without the need for manual intervention. This method leverages existing infrastructure to push configurations and enroll devices quickly. On the other hand, Microsoft Defender Application Guard is designed for isolating browser sessions, not for onboarding devices. Manually onboarding with local scripts can be time-consuming and prone to errors when dealing with hundreds of endpoints. Similarly, enabling Smart Screen through the registry is unrelated to onboarding and focuses on browser-based threat protection. Therefore, integrating Configuration Manager with Intune provides both speed and scalability, making it ideal for this hybrid environment. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Applications not developed with UAC awareness may have compatibility issues. True Compatibility Administrator can be used to create app shims. True switching to an alternate app doesn't require cost or training consideration. False. Modifying registry entries is a recommended long-term compatibility solution. False. Here's the explanation. Applications lacking user account control awareness often run into issues because newer Windows versions enforce elevated privileges differently. Compatibility Administrator is designed to detect such problems and apply shims to resolve them without altering the application's code. On the other hand, moving to an alternate app typically involves costs, licensing changes, and training, making it far from effortless. Finally, modifying registry entries is usually a quick fix for specific scenarios, but is unsuitable as a long-term compatibility strategy due to potential stability and security concerns. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. MDT historically offered features not originally present in Configuration Manager. True modern PowerShell integration in config-mgr has reduced reliance on MDT for deployments. True MDT's rule engine provides granular control of deployment variables. True tool selection should prioritize legacy processes over scenario planning. False. Now that we've gone through the statements and their answers, let's break them down for better understanding. The first statement is true because MDT offered certain advanced features such as deployment templates and a flexible rules engine before Configuration Manager integrated similar capabilities. The second statement is also true since modern PowerShell integration in Config has taken over many tasks that previously required MDT, reducing the dependency on it. The third statement is true as well, with MDT's rule engine still allowing dynamic customization of deployment variables based on the environment. The last statement is false because choosing tools should be guided by current scenario requirements and efficiency rather than relying on older methods purely out of habit. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. In Configuration Manager, predefined reports are built on SQL Server reporting services, while custom reports can also be published to Power BI Report Server. Let's go through why these are the right choices. SQL Server Reporting Services, or SSRS, is the built-in reporting platform that Configuration Manager uses to deliver its predefined reports, making it the default reporting tool for most deployments. On the other hand, Power BI Report Server allows you to create and publish more advanced or custom visualizations, which can enhance the way data is presented beyond the default SSRS capabilities. Microsoft Graph, while powerful for accessing Microsoft 365 data, is not tied to Configuration Manager's reporting. Similarly, Azure Monitor and App Center have their own monitoring and diagnostic roles, but do not serve as the native reporting solution for Configuration Manager. Arrange the following steps involved in preparing and deploying a custom Windows image in the correct order. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Capture a reference computer image using disemmount and modify the captured image. Generalize the image using sysprep. Deploy the image to new PCs. Let's go through the explanation. The process begins by capturing a reference computer image using DISM, which takes a snapshot of a pre-configured system. Then you mount and modify the captured image to integrate updates, drivers, or software so that deployment is efficient. After that, you generalize the image using sysprep, ensuring it removes system-specific information like SEDs and device drivers to make it hardware agnostic. Finally, you deploy the image to new PCs, allowing multiple systems to start from an identical, clean, and optimized configuration. For each Configuration Manager or Endpoint Manager capability, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it with its function. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Enables software distribution through a self-service portal. Software Catalog provides remote control capabilities to assist end users. Remote Control supports OS and application deployment using a unified interface. Configuration Manager allows inventory of all managed device hardware and software. Device Inventory extends management to internet-facing devices via Secure Gateway. Cloud Management Gateway, CMG. Let's break this down. The Software Catalog acts as a self-service portal where users can install available software without waiting for IT, which helps reduce support requests. Remote Control is a feature that allows IT admins to assist users directly by accessing their desktops in real time. Configuration Manager itself offers a unified interface for deploying operating systems, applications, and updates, making management centralized and efficient. Device Inventory enables detailed tracking of all managed devices, hardware, and software, aiding asset management and compliance. Finally, Cloud Management Gateway allows secure device management over the internet without requiring a VPN, extending reach to remote or traveling users.